Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. The highlight of the very underwhelming Azerbaijan Grand Prix was almost very much a lowlight, with Estaban Ocon almost colliding with multiple photographers and other members in the pit lane right to the end of the Grand Prix. An absolutely shocking, shambolic turn of events here, once again putting the FIA in the spotlight after many such incidents over the past couple of seasons. Multiple drivers, team principals already talked out against this. We're going to discuss it in the coming minutes. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Here we go then for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and it was what, 3 laps until Verstappen got past Leclerc. Not a massive surprise, it is what it is. The DRS zone shortening by 100 meters was good, I think, to stop the Red Bulls being absolutely insane, but even then it didn't matter because their straight line speed with DRS is just ridiculous. I believe Verstappen was going past at about 342 kph, Leclerc was about 30 kph slower than that, so I imagine Leclerc wasn't really using too much battery to defend because he knew that there was no point defending. Verstappen got him, Perez got him not too long after that as well, but then the safety car incident happened thanks to Nyck de Vries, and honestly I was very much surprised how quickly the medium tyres were disappearing. It was lap 9-10 where the likes of Hamilton were coming into the pit lane, and I was wondering whether the hards could get to the end of the race, and this is the issue. I think there's a lot of arguments right now that we need to mandate 2 stops rather than just 1. Okay, you've got to do 1 stop because you've got to change for 2 tyre compounds during the race. There's an argument to say that the team should be mandated 2 stops because, man, today was tough to watch at the very least. So Nyck de Vries smashes into the wall, breaks his front suspension. Another disaster class of a weekend for him. The only good time he had was in the sprints, and he smashed into his teammate Yuki Tsunoda and gave him wing damage, so Tsunoda crashed out of the race. Man, honestly, de Vries is at risk, especially with how Red Bull are with their junior drivers, for just kicking him out before the season if it ends. I'd not be surprised at this rate if de Vries is gone before the end of the season, right? There's a lot of juniors like Iwasa, like Liam Lawson, they might want to put into that AlphaTauri. Right now, he's not performing, there's no doubt about it. So then the safety car comes out because of this. Hamilton had just pitted, and Verstappen had also just pitted as well, but it was slightly before the safety car came out. They were wondering, did they need the safety car, did they not? They eventually did put it out, and that left Hamilton in a real predicament. He was down in P10 actually. Russell benefited pretty massively from this one. Verstappen was down in P3, got undercut by Leclerc because of the free stop. Then it was Sainz, Alonso, etc, etc. So pretty much what happened here is there was an incident, and what changed from this kind of analysis to the end of the race? Basically nothing, to be perfectly honest. Obviously Hamilton made a bit of an inroad, but I mean still, there wasn't really much happened from this point to the end of the Grand Prix. Now, so the restart happens, Hamilton gets a great restart actually, gets past Hülkenberg and Ocon, and then quickly after takes Russell as well, which was kind of surprising, impressive. It was the only, like, apart from this move, Alonso on the Sainz, which is incredibly optimistic, well not optimistic, but opportunistic, let's just say, from Alonso. Move down the inside, very rarely you see a move be done there, but Alonso, you know how he is, he made it stick, and Sainz was obviously nowhere near Leclerc this weekend, and Hamilton got one of the only good moves of the weekend done really on Russell because no DRS involved, so it was actually like straight fighting, and man, these cars need DRS to be anywhere near interesting, and even when they have DRS, it doesn't seem to make much difference. So George had a bad restart, he was down into P8, Hamilton got the job done, he was then behind Stroll, and it was pretty funny actually as the race progressed because Fernando Alonso came on the radio saying, hey, give Stroll my settings for brake balance, as if Lawrence Stroll was going to give him a bonus or something for helping out his son, and then straight away Stroll goes off track at the final couple of corners. Hamilton gets the run and gets him down into turn 1, so Hamilton gets that move done and was then closing up on Sainz, and at this point it was just a battle of tyre degradation. The guys knew they were probably going to be going to the end, so they didn't want to push too hard, and this year's cars, we've seen it again today, very evidently, are harder to follow in the dirt. Yeah, okay, we saw Hamilton lapping, let's say in the DRS of the car in front for a few laps in a row, but once you do that for a few laps, you have to drop back, because if you don't, your tyres are going to overheat, and look at the lap times they're pulling out here. So the Red Bulls were, for the majority of the race, a second faster than anybody else, especially on high fuel loads. The Red Bull seems ridiculous. On the lower fuel loads towards the end of the race, they're not actually okay, they're pretty damn good, but they're not actually ridiculously so much faster than the rest of the competition. But at the start of the Grand Prix, there's not even a fight on here. Leclerc was over a second down, Alonso, Carlos Sainz another 5/10 back from Charles, but I mean, look at these gaps, man. We knew the Red Bull was going to be good around here, but I mean, man, it was not even interesting. Verstappen was on the radio trying to figure out why he was further behind Perez than maybe he feels like he should or could have been. Perez did a great job, right? So Perez benefited, of course, from the safety car in an opposite circumstance really to Perez getting screwed over last year at Jeddah in 2022. 2022 when Verstappen won that race, despite Perez leading from the start, and Verstappen was playing around with a few things on the balance and all this stuff. But I mean, they had room for maneuver because they were just pulling away from Leclerc lap after lap. And man, this Red Bull is outrageous. Perez did hit the wall towards the end of the Grand Prix. They were both pushing, right? Perez and Verstappen. I don't really think they were holding too much in reserve. We know that Verstappen, like, you can't tell this guy to slow down. Like, he is going to go for it, and he was closing in towards the end. But Perez did a masterful job. It's another street circuit victory for Sergio Perez. Impressively done. But this was a key point I wanted to note here from Tom Bellingham, that, as I say, it's not just the Red Bull dominance that's making these situations boring. It's the regulations. Hamilton said it a few weeks ago, as did Sainz. Like, just haven't worked this year. Last year, they were definitely an improvement. This year, the races we've seen so far, is it easier to follow? Like, I don't really see much evidence of that. Maybe it is significantly better than 2021, but man, Ocon was, as Tom Bellingham says, on 37-lap-old hard tyres, and everyone was stuck behind him. There was a massive DRS train. Hamilton clearly had more pace than Sainz at times, but could never get past him. And if not for Stroll's mistake, wouldn't have got past him either, because there's obviously a massively long straight, but the DRS is only active right at the end, and the 100 meters they put it further down means that if you're not in a Red Bull, you have a very hard time making a move happen. And I'm sure Hamilton and others, and even Alonso towards the end on Leclerc, would have been frustrated by not being able to get that move done. And it's just lap after lap where Crofty is saying, oh, is Hamilton going to done this? Well, I'm like, no, he's not. He's 7/10 back, and there's no way he's going to close the gap. It's just so underwhelming. So I think some things they've got to think about here, not just the regulations not working this year as well as we might have expected them to. And even Hamilton was like, please guys, can you give me any more power? Turn up the engine a bit more. But I don't really think it would have mattered all that much, to be honest. So basically nothing happens. And I agree with Formula Races here that DRS zone probably shouldn't have been shortened into turn one. They were taken into account how good the Red Bull is. They were taken into account that last year was easier to follow, and this year it probably just killed the race, to be honest. I mean, there was other things that killed the race. It was incredibly dull. I don't even know if I can give it 2 stars out of 5. It might have to be a 1-star Grand Prix for me. Anyway, Sergio Perez wins. Thankfully, at least for talking points, there was a very interesting turn of events at the end of the race. Just wanted to quickly mention the finishes then. So Perez Verstappen 2 seconds back, Leclerc 21 seconds behind. That's the closest out of the Grand Prix so far that have not finished under safety car that any non-Red Bull has been to the Red Bull, but that's Leclerc around Baku, right? Alonso was only 22 seconds back as well. So, you know, the gap it's big. Let's be honest here, right? The first few Grand Prix, the gap between the Red Bull and the next car has been 38 seconds, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. Like, it's not particularly competitive, right? Great result for Perez, though. Good drive. Alonso nearly got Leclerc at the end. Then Sainz way back. Hamilton was frustrated, I imagine, by him. Stroll, Russell eventually pitted for fastest lap. And then we had the likes of Hülkenberg and Ocon, who went the entire race. Good result for Tsunoda as well, P10 here, Norris P9. But Ocon and Hülkenberg had started the race on hards, and they were hoping for a late safety car, late red flag or something, so they could pit and obviously get a free change, and then come out and try and get a point. That's their intention. It was the same thing that Albon did last year in Australia, where he ran the entire race on the hards, hoping for something to happen, pitted to the softs, and still got a point that race. But this is a relatively common strategy, where teams will go on a hard compound with basically no degradation, make it all the way to the end of the race. So Russell had come into pit the lap before. Ocon now, you know, the game was up basically. They had to come into the pit lane. Ocon came in on the very final lap, and I mean, look at this screenshot. They're putting up a barrier here. Like, this is only a little belt, right, to close the pit lane. So I don't know who was communicating this, and Ted Kravitz was in the pit lane saying, look guys, something's about to happen here because Ocon is going to come into the pits. He hasn't pitted yet. He's got to do it unless they're just going to leave him out and get disqualified, which they're not going to. Like, he's going to come into the pit lane. And obviously, even on the very final lap, even when Perez and Verstappen have already crossed the line, someone might still come into the pit. It's not against the rules for a driver to come into the pit lane and cross the checkered flag in the pit lane on their final lap if they, you know, maybe they've got an issue, a technical issue, and they need to come into the box. So allowing people, I mean, look at these guys. They're so clueless. The fact that there's a Formula 1 car coming down here, and this pit lane entry is fast, right? You come swinging through these corners at about 300 kph, and then you're dropping down to like 80 kph at this line. But Ocon's coming in here at well over 100 mile an hour, and there's guys that are just wandering around. And a lot of these guys, they can't see Ocon, they can't hear Ocon because it's noisy everywhere in the pit lane, and they have no idea. The marshals are like putting up the barrier to like protect Parc Ferme, and of course, once the winners, they'll come in here to the pit lane again, and they'll go to the right-hand side as we see it. But this is absolute madness. So, and then we see Ocon actually closes in further, and like they get out the way eventually. They tell the guys, get the hell out the way. and there's not much distance between them. We'll see the onboard in a second here from Ocon. I mean, this is an absolute shambles. And these guys, I mean, he almost takes a guy's foot off on his right, and then this guy here is still clueless as an F1 car and has to dive out the way. Absolutely insane. And this is Ocon's POVs. Here he is coming into the pits, very fast indeed, of course, and as he comes down in here to slow down, in front of him there's just, I mean, this looks like we're watching Group B rally cars, right? I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. So they pull this off again, and then he's going forward. He just about makes it past these guys. I mean, like, look at this guy, man. Honestly, it's just incredible stuff. I can't even believe they had it on the world view, actually, because this was very close to an absolute disaster. Reminded me immediately of the Schumacher moment you guys might remember from, I think this is Monza, right? But certainly the Italian Grand Prix in about 2000 or so, when he was coming into the pit lane and the crowd was everywhere. And you'd have thought they might have learned from this by now, but apparently not, because especially it was the same thing last year in Australia, as I mentioned. Last year, you guys might remember, there was just people wandering around the paddock. Now, this wasn't particularly close to an incident, but I think it was even the same thing in Melbourne this year, was it not? Where there was people like photographers hanging around the pit lane earlier than they should have been. They've had a lot of warnings now. There's been a lot of warnings over the last couple of years. Even the events of the tractor during the red flag period with Gasly last year at Suzuka. The FIA has been called into question many times, and this is another one. Formula One don't run the show here. This is an FIA responsibility, and just absolutely insane. So just wanted to share here the audio from what Ocon has to say on the issue. Can't share the video, copyright, all that stuff, but you'll get his picture here, and what he has to say is very clear that things need to change.
Yeah, not something that we want to see. I mean, I don't understand, why the people are prepping the podium while we are still racing in the pit lane at that moment. There was 2 cars that didn't box. It was a very, very close moment. I'm arriving at 300 kph, braking on the last moment, and I'm seeing barriers and people around at that time. So, yeah, as I said, not something we want to see, and definitely something that needs to be changed.
Christian Horner as well made it very clear that he says the incident is, obviously Esteban is within his rights to pit, finish his race in the pit lane if he wants to. The FIA needs to police that a bit better. And yeah, this was very close to an absolute shambles. The FIA is going to look into this, whether anyone is going to pay for it with their job, as many people have been arguing that they should, because there's got to be some accountability here. Given the amount of times we've seen something like this, and I just find it remarkable how the FIA are constantly on this, oh yeah, Hamilton, got to take that nose piercing out, mate, that's not going to fly. But yet this stuff is going on like every other weekend. It's just, I can't believe it, to be honest. So anyway, there we go. Intrigue to your thoughts in the comments section below. And just to close out with, this is what the championship looks like. Perez closes within 6 points of Max Verstappen at the top. Fernando Alonso P3 misses the podium for the first time. Ferrari get their first podium of the season. Mercedes P3 in the constructors after a decent recovery drive from Lewis Hamilton. And George Russell didn't quite have the pace today as he did yesterday. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.